Hello, and welcome to the lore of Braunhaven. Uh, Excuse my voice. Having a little bit of allergies and asthma problems due to some of the wildfire smoke that has permeated our area lately. But I think I can get through this. So, today we're going to be talking about the guilds of Drzewodolek. And one might be saying that the idea of guilds in an elven city is not normal, and you would be correct. The guilds are not normal for the elves. So when they decided to uh, dump the monarchy and they went with the Elder Council, a series of guilds slowly started to crop up, and unlike other guilds in human-run cities, these guilds aren't out for self-interest or, um, well, self-interest is really the biggest culprit, but they're not really out for the self-interest of the guild or even so much as their members. It is more of a lobbying system for these different uh, sections of industry or of really daily life for what would take place for an elven city, and it is their lobbying system for taking the matters of these individual industries to the Primarch, who it's his job to deal with the leaders of the guilds and then bring those concerns to the Elder Council. And that one fact is really what makes the Primarch's position quite a powerful one politically. And these guilds, uh, they they function in multiple ways for multiple sections of industry. Starting with the Guild of Arborist Laborers and Construction Workers. So most people would look at this and say, well, it's a typical labor union, and for the most part, that could be considered correct. But they handle all of the primary sources of construction in Drzewodolek. So the other side of this is that when the elves of Drzewodolek, the High Elves, decided to adopt the new faith of the Council of the 12 Elder Gods, they, in so doing, they have kind of moved further away from the old faith and the druids, and that has caused there to be a lack of the magic that would be used in a lot of their construction, because a lot of elven construction involves simply growing and cultivating a living tree into a building that you would want. And in doing that, they would, and traditionally, they would have druids casting growth of nature to cause it to grow faster and into that shape. Moving towards the new faith, they have less and less people capable of casting that. They do still use it occasionally, but for the most part, a lot of this construction can take a long time because they're not able to cast, or they don't have the people available for all of the construction projects that can cast those spells. And so they have to cultivate these trees and the plant life in a manner that is natural. And so this can take some time. And so this guild has kind of moved up. The uh, the guild over the last 200 years, they have employed a lot more materials that are imported from outside of the Sylvanas forest. Some of these items are coming from Orentis or some of the colonies out in the more tropical islands out in the Dragon Sea. And so this is just another sticking point for the more conservative wood elves. They're looking at this and saying, well, this is a sure sign that that we are becoming more like the humans, and that is not something that is really wanted by the elves. The wood elves, and really the high elves as well, see the humans as covetous and more prone towards not necessarily just evil for evil's sake, although that is sometimes the case, but they see them as uh, a really a evil of um, self-righteousness and self-preservation rather than looking out for the people as a whole. And so the Wood Elves do not like the guilds at all, and the Guild of Arborists, Laborers, and Construction Workers is one such example. The next guild, because elves are so magic is innate to them. They are arcane spellcasters uh, naturally, and magic is just something that is taught to many of them in from an early age in school life. I'm not sure if elves actually have schools, but you know what I'm trying to say. And so you have the Guild of Arcana Magistry, and the this guild is something that came about with the High Elves specifically. The Wood Elves take magic as being something more natural, whereas the High Elves have looked at some of the arcane academies and colleges across the human realms and have kind of mimicked that with the Guild of Arcana Magistry. And so this particular guild is very, very much into the the creation of new spells and the artistry of becoming an archmage, more or less. They less than so much than the wood elves. The high elves are not really fans of wild magic. They don't like, the natural order, and they want a more codified system of teaching elven youth the basics of magic, and every elf should be taught the basics of magic as their philosophy. But only uh, extreme cases of spellcasters should ever be admitted into the Guild of Arcana Magistry, and this requires a lifetime of study, almost to a religious extent. And uh, there are very few that have made the Archmage title, and one of those is actually was known as a human. He is actually, of course, we know him being an avatar of the 12 elder gods. Maximilian Tacidantlus was actually one of the first humans that was able to gain a high level of rank in the Guild of Arcana Magistry in the city of Drzewodolek. Now, if you are a arcane spellcaster, magic user, illusionist, necromancer, witches are a little weird, but um, upon entering the city, there is a registration fee that is required for all spellcasters that aren't citizens of the city. Usually, it costs 5 facial to the guild, and that can be paid directly to the guild's office. And um, will allow you to operate and cast magic openly for the period of 1 week. If you are going to be there for a longer period than that, then they do ask that you uh, pay a higher fee or consider joining the guild if you're going to be there for any real length of time. They will, of course, allow you, if you're only going to be there for say 2 or 3 weeks, they will allow you to pay 15 facial for the 15 or for the 3 weeks that you'll be there, for instance. During that time, it also gives you access to the guild's magical library and their laboratories. So if you have some research magical research that you need to do, that can be done at the guild hall. Another guild that is almost and totally and completely useless, and yet it exists, is the Guild of Artists and Entertainers. The Guild of Artists and Entertainers is known throughout Drzewodolek as really being more of a social club. They have no real requirements for joining. Of course, you would have to be an artist or an entertainer of some kind, or at the very least, a patron of the arts, in that you are donating large sums of money to further artistic endeavors. But Aside from that, they don't really do a whole lot. Members usually go to the guild hall to sit around and drink and play music, recite poetry, um, spoken word, things of that nature. Now, they do, of course, help organize some of the entertainment aspects. They of course do large plays, um, musical concerts, things like that, all throughout the city, and those are generally organized by the Guild of Artists and Entertainers. But the reason why the guild is almost completely useless is because elves, and this is true of both high elves and wood elves, have a natural affinity towards art. They are not able to take the bard class, but they do have a natural affinity towards art. Everything that they do has an artistic bent. A simple door leading into a house is not just a door. There is always some kind of, um, uh, you know, I guess it would be Art Deco, Art Nouveau style bent. There's a lot of flourishes, a lot of natural use of wood. There is a lot of lattice work, things of that nature is always going to be considered elven, and every elf does things this way. And so, having a guild for artists and entertainers is odd. A lot of elven magic is sung rather than spoken, or uh, the spells are written in a prose style as opposed to human magic, where it's just an incantation. Everything is artistic, and so this guild is really seen as a social club. It's some place to go and drink. Now, because of the fact that elves and high elves and wood elves are not able or do not produce the bard class, which is a little strange since they both can be druids. But in either case, the Guild of Artists and Entertainers is one of the biggest focal points for half elves, and this is about the only saving grace for half elves, because wood elves and high elves typically treat half elves as second class citizens. Um, they're they're just not they're tolerated, but they're not well liked or really even taken care of. And in a lot of cases, they may be overlooked for work versus, a full-blooded high elf or wood elf. I would think that the wood elves actually treat their half elves a little bit better than the high elves, but the high elves are definitely very arrogant and always view half elves as less than. They are not considered to be full elves and are beneath them. This isn't a form of artificial racism or anything of that nature. It is more of a case of the um, that's just something that they truly believe to their very core. It's something that they know. It's not a artificially implanted idea such as racism. This is just something that the elves believe to their core. The next guild would be the Guild of Housing and Development. Now, the Guild of Housing and Development kind of arose because of the division between the Wood Elves and the High Elves, and it has furthered because of the influx of some of the uh, businesses from far away, such as Orentis and possibly Erebachia. And so the port district is really, or the docks district rather, has really kind of um, lent itself to a need for the Guild of Housing and Development, because all of these people need someplace to stay if they're going to be here for any length of time. And the biggest thing that the Guild of Housing and Development is trying to get to happen is it is trying to push the Council of Elders and the Primarch to mend that division between High Elves and Wood Elves. And so the Guild of Housing and Development is kind of thrived. Of recently, the Guild of Housing and Development has kind of, well, I wouldn't say that they're the core reason, but they are at the heart of a rather serious recession in the economy of the city of Drzewodolek. And the reason for this is that the Council of Elders, there was some movement towards mending this division between the elven species, and so the Guild of Housing and Development was authorized to make areas available for wood elves that want to move back into the city, and they did that. And part of this means that they had to make farms and make these areas ready for the wood elves to simply move in and occupy. They were ready to go, and then the Council of Elders, once again, as usual, stagnated because of the long lives of elves. Nobody's in a rush to do anything, and so because of this stagnation, one of two things happened. Either the guild tried to remedy the situation by giving the land or selling the land or leasing the land to already to inhabitants that already lived in the city, and this, of course, uh, caused there to be more active farms than was needed for the population of city, and so they are overproducing in the farms. They're overproducing produce. Other farms simply went fallow. Now, the farm going fallow isn't really going to tank the economy, but it is going to take work to make the farm at some point viable again, because they're going to have to redo the land. But the farms that are overproducing has caused prices of produce and farm goods to tank. And so that has caused the price to drop at the ports for export. And really, it has caused the price of imported produce to drop somewhat, although some of that produce, most of that produce, is considered exotic. Um, special fruits and whatnot that are coming from Arabacia, such as coconuts and lemons and limes, to oranges and peaches from Orentis, and pears from Orentis. They have dropped slightly, but not nearly as much because they are considered luxury items because they are imports. But overall, this recession, there has been a deep recession in your typical produce that would be uh, farmed in the region. And most elves are pointing to the Guild of Housing and Development as for the cause of this. And again, that's not really entirely true, because the true cause of it is that the Council of Elders has really failed the elven people on multiple occasions. Next, you have the Guild of Military Affairs, and so the High Elves. One thing that the High Elves are good at, aside from being arrogant, is that they do take very good care of their veterans, and so all elves that have done a tour in the city's militia, or a few times when the elves have had to marshal an army, for instance, the defense against Naja, they have all of these veterans, and after a stint in the militia or some kind of military campaign, the elves take it to the highest degree that these veterans are taken care of. And this was this was originally actually a council that was created, a sub-council by King Viduan Ravenala, that it was very important to him that these elves are taken care of. If they are injured, they need to be immediately taken care of, and it has to be at the crown's cost, not at the individual's cost. So the this council later has now morphed into the Guild of Military Affairs, and it is quite active right now, and for quite some time. Really, there hasn't been any armies that have been marshaled, but the elves do maintain a constant militia force. And so the guild hall for military affairs has, for instance, an infirmary, or a small hospital maintained by clerics and druids occasionally. And they really champion the need for these veterans. When they're not, now that they're not living in barracks for the militia or whatever army has been brought about, they need someplace to live, and so the guild operates closely with the Guild of Housing and Development. This is one of the ways that these farms for the wood elves were parceled out because and are now overproducing because these some of these veterans needed places to live. Next, you have the Guild of Shipping and Fishing. They are probably one of the more larger guilds in the docks district, and really they handle pretty much anything that happens on the Indian River from the docks district all the way down to the to where it meets the Dragon Sea, and which I mean, in the scale of things, is quite short, but this can really have an effect on ships or boats that are operating there. They levy a tax on all fishing that is coming into the port. It's a very minor tax. You're talking about 2% compared to some other locales, but there that is a major import. Now they also um, for a season of whatever fish that is in season is going to cost a license, and a typical license for a season costs 5 facial. And there is a part of this license is that there is a strict limit on how many fish are able to be caught per day. And this is a part of the elven philosophy of conservation. You can't just fish the Indian River until there's none of this type of fish left. There has to be a limit set, and the elves are very strict on that. And uh, there are some harsh penalties for people that are caught fishing on the river without a license. Generally, you're not going to see elves doing this kind of thing. You might see wood elves doing it because the wood elves tend to give the middle finger to all of the guilds, but the you're not going to see other high elves doing it. It's just foreign to them. But you might see humans that have come into the city doing it, and they are treated rather harshly. That's probably one of the first things that ship crews are told when entering the docks district is, don't drop a line in the water off the bow of the boat because while we're docked, because they're going to come and they're going to be pissed off at you until you pay for a license. There's also a dock fee that is levied whenever a ship docks. Small boats usually cost about 10 facial per day, and large vessels can cost upwards of 20 to 50 facial depending on how big they are. Um, the larger vessels also have laws in place that require that longshoremen from the Guild of Arborist Laborers and Construction Workers are the only ones that can be hired to load and unload these ships. And this is really a law that was put into place by the Guild of Shipping and Fishing to preserve elven jobs in the city, because this was a problem with Erebosian and Orentian crews. They would have their own sailors act as longshoremen to load and unload the boats, when that could be a job that would be paid to one of the high elves of Drzewodolek. And so this law was put into place that only longshoremen from the Guild of Arborist Laborers and Construction Workers can be used. Next, you have the Guild of Waterworks, and the Guild of Waterworks. So the Drzewodolek as a city can be said that they have running water to a point. There are a lot of constructed fountains, and some buildings do have running water that is able to be pumped into, or not really pumped. They use a lot of gravity, but they do have running water for some water basins and sinks of that nature. Not necessarily toilets, but it's a lot easier to run a bath in Drzewodolek than it would be in some other cities. You don't have to carry the bucket. You just move a lever, and the water is diverted off of of a pipe system that will deliver the water. And this was all the works or the work of the Guild of Waterworks. And it goes clear to a point of they have a very extensive sewer system that the Guild of Waterworks has done that runs beneath the city and actually is able to funnel that raw sewage down into the underworld. And they just believe it or not, the elves just dump it down there. Now, of course, this goes through a series of lichen and underground mushrooms, fungus and lichen and all of that manner that does filter it quite a bit. And of course, this has caused those particular lichens and fungus to thrive because they're getting fed constantly. And so it is not purely raw sewage. It is treated sewage that ends up in the Underdark. But you can imagine that some of the Underdark species are not happy with the surface dwellers just, dumping literally their crap into, what is their home. But as of yet, nobody's really brought that up as an issue. And then the last guild is really an unofficial. It's not a true guild. It is the Zilmer, and the Zilmer is a high elven organized criminal ring. It is their thieves guild, not just thieves, but also assassins, acrobats, and bards. These individuals operate in shadows. Now, the Zilmer does not have their own guild hall. They don't need one. Instead, the Zilmer can openly act or openly operate. Well, not openly. They covertly operate in out of the guild halls of other guilds, and so you know there might be 2 or 3 members of the Zilmer that are operating out of the Guild of Shipping and Fishing. There could be upwards of 10 to 15 that are operating out of the Guild of Arborists, Laborers, and Construction Workers. In fact, the Guild of Arborists, Laborers, and Construction Workers is pretty much considered by most of the common elves on the street to be in the pocket of the Zilmer, as the case may be. And the Zilmer really they don't act like some of the other thieves guilds in the world. They are a little bit more low key, but they do have a network of spies all across the city, and it is rumored that the Primarch takes great advantage of this network of spies in order to further his own political ends. But be that as it may, even though the Zilmer seems to be a little bit downplayed compared to other thieves guilds across the world, they are not to be trifled with. They are killers and murderers of the highest degree. They just don't make a big show of it like a lot of the others do. So those are the guilds of Drzewodolek, and next time we will be talking about the Docks District and how it is the kind of the melting pot of Drzewodolek. In fact, it is the only melting pot of Drzewodolek that you'll find. So it is the most common place for foreigners to go. Thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.